These events happened to me about 4 years ago when I spent a year working at one of the largest theme parks in the UK. This place is about half an hour from where I live, and while I won't name it directly, I'm sure a few of you can guess where it is. I worked there as a ride assistant, and on several different rides, including 3 of the big coasters and a couple of the dark rides. For those who don't know, a dark ride is basically a ride that is completely indoors. The most common example of this is your typical ghost train. Now, one particular ride is based partly inside the ruins of the family estate from which the park gets its name. The ride tells a pretty well-known local story about the family that used to own the estate, and a supposed curse that they were afflicted with. The ride would start with an indoor queuing area before moving guests into a cinema which told them the story, and then to a place known as the Octagon Room, where there would be a small, effect-based show. Then finally guests would unknowingly exit the ruins and board the actual ride, which was a haunted swing type affair. The actual ruins are well known for being potentially haunted, with programs such as Most Haunted featuring them, and after my time on that ride I can 100% agree. One night during October, which is when the park stays open till 9 p.m. to allow guests to ride in the dark, I was sat at the end of a queue line. A member of staff is always stationed here to ensure that there A. aren't too many people in each group, and B. to greet the guests. Now, usually after about 5 p.m. the ride became pretty deserted, as most people wanted to ride the roller coasters in the dark, not walk through some dimly lit building. So my job was really easy. At the end of the queue line, there was a small station with a television screen showing security camera feeds, and a direct phone line to the ride operator's cabin. The camera is focused on the outdoor entrance, the entire queue line, and the cinema area. There weren't any blind spots either on these feeds. Now this night I was doing my usual thing, checking Facebook, playing Angry Birds, and keeping one eye on the monitor when I spotted what I guessed was a young couple making their way up the winding queue, zigzagging the way towards me. I locked my phone and shoved it in my pocket, as sometimes the managers like to try to sneak up on us. As the couple got about 3/4 of the way to me, I turned around to give them a friendly wave and to assure them that the ride was still open. As the couple got about 3/4 of the way to me, I turned around to give them a friendly wave and to assure them that the ride was still open and that they would have the place to themselves. They were gone. I stood staring for a moment in complete puzzlement. There was no way they could have ran out of the room without either opening one of the loud, heavy fire doors or jumping over about 20 sets of metal bars that made up the queue. As my brain processed this information, the hairs in the back of my neck rose and a sudden chill ran through my very core. Needless to say, I was very relieved when a co-worker came out about 10 minutes later so that I could go for my break. Well, that was an isolated incident. The next thing happened several times but never really fazed me. Throughout my life, I have had a fair few paranormal encounters, and have a certain sense when something is around, and whether it is malign or not. In the building, the Octagon Room was the last section of the ruins that guests passed through, and believe it or not, was a fairly large octagon-shaped chamber. Usually after the show finishes, a thick heavy curtain is pulled back by a machine to reveal a secret tunnel that guests must follow. About 4 months into the season, this machine broke, and the maintenance staff realized that the part they needed wouldn't be available until after the park closed in November. So rather than pinning back the curtain, the decision was made that one ride assistant would have the fun job of standing behind the curtain in the pitch black, and once each show had finished, they would pull the curtain and allow the guests to pass through, making sure nobody was left behind. More often than not, this duty fell to me. I enjoyed my time, sat in the dark. After a week or two I knew the exact timings. After a week or two I knew the exact timing of all the light and sound cues of the show, and also scared quite a few people who weren't expecting some guy to be stood behind this mysterious curtain. In fact, many people thought I was a wax statue, and I would play on this before moving slightly, whenever they went in to take a closer look at me. However, every so often, I would get an immense oppressive feeling wash over me. The room would feel much darker than it had a couple of seconds before, and I would always get the distinct impression that there was some sort of male presence just behind me. Although I never turned around once because, fuck that, I always stood my ground. I knew this presence did not want me or anybody else there in this area, and he made that quite clear to many other members of staff. There were several reports of female co-workers being pushed from behind while working in that area, and even pinched. The frequency and nature of this presence soon meant that I was one of the only people who were willing to stand there and endure this intense feeling of hatred that would randomly appear and disappear, all the while hearing an endless loop of some old hag cackling and whispering curses. I loved it. I'm writing this as my girlfriend tells me the story, so these will be her words pretty much. My job is just to type and try not to screw up too much. When I was 12 years old, I spent the night with my best friend Carrie. We had big plans for our sleepover. We were planning to stay up all night, listen to music, play board games, and talk about boys. The usual things little girls do. Around 2 a.m., after her parents were sleeping, we decided we were hungry. We knew we had to be quiet so that we didn't wake them, so we tiptoed into the hallway from her room. As we made our way into the kitchen, we had to go through the dining room. Because we were so quiet, we heard a tapping noise. Immediately, we both knew that someone was tapping on the living room window. You could see the living room from the dining room, so immediately our heads turned towards the living room. We could see a figure standing on the porch next to the window. Because of the way the porch light was illuminating the figure, it looked like a shadow. We thought the figure was Carrie's sister's boyfriend. The sister and boyfriend had been banned from seeing each other, and we assumed this was his weird way of getting her attention. We decided that either he would leave on his own, Tina, Carrie's sister, would see him, or Carrie's parents would wake up and run him off. We didn't want that last possibility to happen because we had already been told to go to sleep more than once, and we knew we'd get in trouble for sneaking into the kitchen for food when we were supposed to be asleep. As we walked through the dining room, the figure kept tapping at the window. When he came into full view, we knew for sure it was a man, and we could tell that he had a knife in his hand. The knife was what he was tapping with. Now, because this window had no shades, blinds, or curtains, we were sure he could see us as well. We both dropped to the floor and started crawling to the kitchen. When we made it to the kitchen, we literally sat in the middle of the kitchen floor whispering about what we had just seen. We were both sure that we saw the same man with a knife. We knew we had to get to her parents' room as quickly as possible. To do this, we had to walk through the living room. We sat in the kitchen trying to figure out how we were going to get there without him seeing us. We peeked around the kitchen wall and could still see him standing on the front porch. We couldn't make it to her parents' room without him possibly seeing us. We knew we had to find a place that had a door that would lock, in case he came in through the sliding glass door that currently had no lock since it was broken. The sliding glass door was in the dining room, and right next to where we were. We decided to crawl back to her room. As we did, we heard the front door knob jiggling. We basically freaked. We crawled back to her room as fast as we could and locked the door. We crawled to her bedroom window that faced the street so that we could see if he was still on the front porch. We didn't see him. We didn't hear tapping either. As we were watching from her window, we saw him leave her yard and start walking up the street towards the main highway. I could see the knife shimmering off the streetlights. It was a huge butcher's knife. When we realized he was leaving, we ran into her parents' room to tell them what happened. We told them what we had seen, and due to our overactive imaginations, and hundreds of stories that freaked us out before, they didn't believe us. We reluctantly went back to our bedroom and locked the door. We ended up sleeping on the floor, hidden by the bed from the windows in her room. The next morning was a Sunday. Carrie's dad always walked up to the corner store up the street to get a paper, coffee, and smokes. When he came back, he was empty-handed. He said the store was roped off with police tape, and it turned out the clerk in the store had been stabbed to death. So, knife-tapping psycho? Let's not meet. I had just moved to a new neighborhood and transferred into another school. Again. This is my 17th school in my 15 years of life. I was not an army brat or anything. I just had a difficult mother who was a big fan of running from her problems or mistakes. most of which happened to be in the form of men. I made friends fast, of course, because everyone is very interested in talking to the new girl, even if that girl just wants to be left alone because, let's face it, she's going to be moving again in less than a year. Keep in mind that this was a time before social media or cell phones. In fact, I think AOL was just starting to be a big thing. But we were young, and no one I knew my age had a computer for themselves. And only a couple had a family computer handy, so keeping in touch wasn't an option for my young, bitter self. So as I started my new life, I was jostled around from group to group until I was placed into one that I fit. I don't know how middle schools work now, but back then they were very cliquey. I didn't worry. I always ended up in the popular group. I'm not trying to brag. It's just where I always ended up. I appeared outgoing and was pretty cute, but not too cute to be threatening to the other girls. And I spent most of my time hoping to play Pokemon Red instead of putting on makeup, but I digress. Since I was jostled around a bit, I got to hear the local gossip from each group and their different takes on it. And one thing they were all fascinated with was my address. Apparently, the apartment building I had just moved into had been part of a murder investigation. Now, kids talk, so I don't know how much of this is actually true. I heard two separate stories. One was about a boy who disappeared. He was last seen riding a white bike, and this bike was later found thrown at the bottom of a stairwell that led down into underground parking. And I also heard that a body was found in the underground parking, a butcher's knife, and the words, "You're next," presumably painted in blood on the wall. There are 5 apartment buildings on this side of the skull, all with above ground parking and below ground. But my building was the only one whose below ground parking was sealed off with cinder blocks. Weird. Maybe these stories were true. I also found the stairwell on the other side that leads down. It was taped off, and a white bike covered in mud lay at the bottom. Looking back now, I wish I could shake my younger self and say, "Please don't leave evidence, silly." But I didn't think about that. I just thought about how creepy it was. I also found police tape on the fence poles at the entrance of the blocked-off underground parking exit. It wasn't just hanging tape. It was only a small bit that was around the pole, the rest of it long since pulled down. I tried to convince my mom to move, but it was a new place and she was dating a new guy, so I had to hold tight for 6 months or so. Fast forward 9 months. The rumors had spiraled out of control to include a killer clown for about a month after I had moved in. But then after that, the rumors died down, and the stories were soon forgotten. People, I assume vagrants, had even broken open the door in the stairwell that used to be taped off, and us kids would dare each other to go into it. I'm not sure what I did, but I know I pissed off the queen bee Gemma something fierce, and determined to ruin my life and make me piss my pants. She dared me to go down there at night. I actually fancied myself as kind of smart, so logically, I knew there weren't any ghosts and killer clowns hanging out underground, and said, "Sure, I'll do it." I was actually scared shitless. I'm a firm believer in spooky shit, but I tried to talk to myself logically. I was so focused on my conviction that I'd be fine because nothing supernatural was going on, that I failed to take into consideration the vagrants. Descending the stairs at night was the last thing I said I remembered. I saw some really demonic and scary shit. I assumed my brain was just playing tricks on me and I didn't want to tell anyone what I saw, or what I thought I saw. I did piss my pants, but Gemma and the others never laughed. I guess that's the trade-off when you get stabbed twice. We moved away within the week. Hello everyone. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please click like and subscribe for future content. Until next time, take care and stay safe.